I gave everything to raise my son, sleepless nights, double shifts, and even my own dreams. But the day I told him I'd lost my job at the Veterans Care Home, he didn't offer comfort. He threw me out, told me I was dead weight, a burden. After everything I'd sacrificed, he tossed me aside like I was nothing. I raised my son, Daniel, with everything I had, my time, my energy, my future. There were no vacations, no luxuries, no me time. Just day after day, year after year, doing whatever it took to give him a chance at a better life. I worked overnight cleaning office buildings, took care of other people's children during the day, and when I was finally offered a job at the Veterans Care Home, full-time with benefits, it felt like a blessing from above. Not because it paid well, but because it gave me purpose. It gave me something stable, something dignified. That job became my second home for over 20 years. I took care of veterans who had no family left, held their hands through pain, fed them when they could no longer lift a spoon, and listened to their stories like they were sacred history. And when one of those men, a retired colonel named Gerald Whitman, was nearing the end of his life, I was the only one he asked for. I stayed by his side until the very last moment. I didn't know then that he'd left something behind for me, something far greater than I could ever imagine. But before that truth came to light, I experienced the kind of betrayal that breaks a mother's heart in ways words can't touch. The day I lost my job at the care home wasn't even my fault. A new management company came in, slashed budgets, and let go of nearly half the staff. I was one of the lucky ones handed a severance envelope and a pat on the back. I came home that evening still in my uniform, holding that envelope in my hand, thinking maybe, just maybe, my son would tell me it was going to be okay, that we'd figure it out together. Instead, he looked at me with disgust, as if I had personally failed him. "You lost your job?" he repeated, voice rising with each syllable. "So what now? You just expect to sit around in my house and live off me and Natalie like a freeloader?" I froze. It wasn't the first time he'd been dismissive, or even cruel when he was stressed. But this wasn't stress. This was how he really saw me, a burden, dead weight, useless now that I couldn't bring in a paycheck. My daughter-in-law, Natalie, didn't even try to hide her smirk. "Honestly," she said, "we've got enough going on without worrying about your situation." My situation, as if I were a broken appliance left on the curb. I stood there in the kitchen, the envelope still in my hand, hearing their voices but not really listening anymore. My own son, the boy I sacrificed my youth for, was now ready to throw me away like garbage, and all I had done was lose a job I gave my soul to. But what neither of them knew, what no one knew, was that Gerald Whitman, the old colonel I sat beside in his final weeks, had left behind a will. And in it, he named me as the sole beneficiary of his estate, a quiet, private thank you for years of kindness and care. His lawyer had been trying to contact me for days, and when I finally called back, I learned something that left me speechless. Who knew that he hadn't just left me a thank you card? So as my son raised his voice and my daughter-in-law told me there was no room for freeloaders, I stood there silent, not because I was defeated, but because I finally saw everything clearly. They didn't love me. They used me. But I wouldn't be used anymore. And this time, I had something that no raising Daniel on my own wasn't something I planned. It was something life handed me, wrapped in hardship, sealed with heartbreak. I was 26 when my husband died in a roadside accident, hit by a drunk driver just 2 miles from home. One moment we were a young couple saving up for a second-hand car, and the next I was standing alone at a gravesite holding our 2-year-old son. I didn't have time to grieve. I couldn't. My entire life narrowed down to one mission: keep Daniel safe, warm, and fed. I worked cleaning offices during the week and waitressing at a diner on weekends. I gave up college, moved into a basement apartment that flooded when it rained, and wore the same coat for 5 winters straight. But Daniel never went hungry. He never knew what it felt like to fall asleep cold. That was my promise to him, and I kept it. Over the years, I climbed slowly out of survival mode. I took a course in elder care and landed a job at Rose Hill Veterans Residence. It paid modestly, but I loved that job. I loved the veterans, men and women who had lost limbs and memories but still carried pride in their posture and fire in their stories. They became family to me in a way that sometimes even my own son wasn't. I spent more holidays with them than I did with Daniel after he moved in with Natalie. Not that he invited me often. She always had an excuse. Daniel was busy, or there wasn't enough space at their place, even though I was the one who helped them with the down payment. Still, I made peace with it. I told myself they were building their lives, that it was my job to give, not to expect anything in return. Even when they asked me to help with their mortgage, again, and I pulled money from my emergency savings. Even when they asked me to co-sign a car loan just temporarily. Even when they forgot my birthday 3 years in a row. I told myself this is what mothers do. They sacrifice. And yet, not once did Daniel ask how I was doing. Not once did Natalie offer to help me with my own groceries or take me out for a coffee. When I needed oral surgery last year, I quietly put it on a payment plan, smiling through the pain because I didn't want to bother them. But what hurt the most wasn't the silence. It was the subtle way I started disappearing in their eyes. To Natalie, I was never more than the woman who cleaned old people. She once told a friend at a dinner party that I was sweet but simple. She had no idea I overheard. To Daniel, I was a piece of furniture, useful when needed, invisible when not. But I stayed quiet, kept working, kept giving, because that's what I'd always done. Because I truly believed that in the end, love would be enough. And then I lost my job. The one thing they still valued about me, my income, vanished. And with it, any illusion of respect or care they may have pretended to show. I didn't cry the night they kicked me out. I didn't scream, plead, or demand to stay. I just quietly packed my things, some old clothes, a few books, my mother's locket, and left with 2 small suitcases and a heart heavier than I'd ever known. I checked into a modest hotel near the bus station. No family, no job, no plan. But what Daniel and Natalie didn't know, what no one knew, was that I wasn't as powerless as they thought. 2 weeks earlier, just before I lost my job, I received a handwritten letter on heavy cream-colored paper. The envelope was thick, embossed with a golden crest I didn't recognize. It was from a law firm I had never heard of, Grayson, Llewellyn, and Barrister. The letter was short and formal. You have been named as the sole beneficiary in the estate of the late Colonel Gerald Whitman. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Colonel Whitman had been under my care for the past 6 years. A proud, quiet man who rarely spoke of his family, because as I learned, he didn't have any. He had outlived them all. And in his final months, when he could no longer walk or feed himself, he asked for me by name every morning. I don't trust anyone else, he said once, his voice cracking from weakness. You treat people with dignity, even when the world doesn't. I didn't think much of it at the time. Just an old soldier's gratitude. I had no idea what it truly meant. I called the firm the day after I moved into the hotel. The receptionist immediately transferred me to one of the partners, a man named Charles Barrister. His tone was warm, respectful, so different from the way Daniel and Natalie had spoken to me. Ms. Holloway, he said, the colonel left very specific instructions. He wanted you to be taken care of. He described you as the one person who never gave up on him. His family abandoned him, but you didn't. He paused. I hope you're sitting down. When he told me the amount, I felt like the floor vanished beneath me. $6.8 million. Investments, pensions, land, and a small trust from a government contract payout, meticulously arranged, legally transferred, irrevocably mine. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest friend. Because in that moment, I realized something that sent chills down my spine. If Daniel had spoken to me that way before knowing I lost my job, what would he have done after knowing I had millions? They had shown me who they were when they thought I had nothing, and now I had everything. But I wasn't going to flaunt it. Not yet. No. I wanted to see how far their selfishness could stretch, how cold they could truly be. Because the next part of this story, that's when things began to turn, quietly, powerfully, and completely in my favor. The day after I left their house, Daniel texted me, not to ask where I'd gone, but to remind me that I still had a few things in the hallway closet, and to pick them up before the weekend so they didn't take up space. Space. That's all I was to him now. A storage problem. I replied with a simple, thank you. I'll come by Thursday. When I arrived, Natalie answered the door. She didn't smile. Didn't even pretend to be civil. She pointed at a plastic laundry basket filled with my belongings, a folded shawl, a worn photo album, a mug Daniel had painted for me in kindergarten that now had a chip on its rim. I carried it out to my car, and she shut the door behind me without another word. I sat in the driver's seat, gripping that chipped mug, wondering how a child who once cried if I left the room could now lock me out of his life with such ease. A few days later, Daniel called. "Look," he said, "Natalie and I have been talking. Since you're not working right now, maybe you could do something useful." I waited, bracing myself. "You could help out with errands, drive Natalie's mom to her appointments, cook dinner a few nights a week, maybe clean. You've done that sort of thing professionally, right?" I let the silence stretch before answering. "You want me to be your maid?" "Don't be dramatic," he snapped. "We're trying to include you in the household. You're not earning, and it's not like you've got other obligations." "Include me? Like a chore?" I nearly laughed, but it caught in my throat. Daniel had always been ambitious, but Natalie sharpened that ambition into arrogance. Her parents were both upper-middle-class academics who had always treated me like I was invisible. At their engagement dinner, her father asked if I enjoyed retirement, and her mother later told me the caterers must have reminded me of home. I was the help, as far as they were concerned. And now Daniel was trying to position me back into that role. Not as a mother, not even as a person, just a utility. Things only got worse from there. Natalie started sending voice notes asking if I could pop by and clean out the garage or drop off some groceries since you're not busy. When I didn't respond, she messaged again. "It's honestly kind of selfish. You lived with us for a while. You should be offering to help instead of disappearing." Disappearing. I had spent my entire life showing up. Birthday parties I paid for but wasn't invited to. Emergency loans I gave without question. A wedding I helped finance, only to be seated at the last table behind the buffet. I never disappeared. I was erased. The final straw came 2 weeks later. I had returned to the veterans' home for one last visit, needing closure. Some of the staff were still there, nurses who hugged me tightly, who cried when I said goodbye. I walked the halls one last time and stood by Colonel Whitman's door. That evening, Daniel called again. "I hope you're not wasting time visiting that place," he said, voice tight. "You should be out applying for jobs." I told him calmly, "I'm not applying anywhere." He scoffed. "You seriously think you can just retire? You don't even have a pension, Mom." I could hear Natalie in the background, muttering something. Daniel laughed. "Tell her what your mom suggested," he said. Natalie's voice came through clearly this time. "There's a senior housing center downtown. It's clean and has decent food. They accept residents who are willing to work part-time in the kitchen or do janitorial stuff. You'd get your meals and a roof over your head. It's actually a great deal for someone like you." Someone like me. That was it. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. In their eyes, I was no longer family. I was just one more burden they wanted off their doorstep. But what they didn't know, what they would never see coming, was that they had just shoved the wrong person aside, because the woman they'd written off as weak and washed up, she was about to rise stronger than they could ever imagine. I sat alone in that dim hotel room, Daniel's words still echoing in my ears like a song stuck on repeat. "You don't even have a pension. You can clean at the senior home. It's a great deal for someone like you. Someone like me." I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror that night. Lines I hadn't noticed before ran across my face like tired roads. My hair, once a rich chestnut, now streaked with gray. My eyes, sunken, worn, but still burning with something fierce beneath the surface. I whispered to the mirror, "What did I do to deserve this?" And then slowly the answer came. Nothing. I had sacrificed everything for Daniel. My career, my youth, even my sense of self. Not once had I asked for repayment. Not once had I tried to make him feel guilty for all I gave up. I gave him my strength, my love, my everything. But the truth was finally clear. They didn't love me. They valued me. And now that they believed I had no value left, they were done. Daniel's final words in that call had been the nail in the coffin. "We all make sacrifices, Mom. You should be thankful we even let you stay with us this long. I have a wife now, a future. You've had your time." My time? As if my existence had an expiration date. Something in me snapped, but not in the way they might have expected. I didn't scream or curse or beg. I didn't fight back with tears. I got quiet, focused. That night, I sat on the bed, opened my old planner, and wrote 3 words on a blank page in the back. Take it back. Not just my dignity, not just the money or the house or the freedom I gave up, all of it. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel and booked a room at a 5-star boutique inn downtown, the kind of place Daniel and Natalie said was too good for people like us. I used the Colonel's attorney to open a private financial portfolio, just as he had instructed in his final documents. I scheduled a meeting with his estate advisor. Within 48 hours, my bank account reflected what they all thought I'd never have: power, privacy, possibility. I didn't respond to Daniel's messages asking where I was. I didn't answer Natalie's texts about dropping off your tax forms, because I wasn't going to be the quiet servant anymore. I wasn't going to be the desperate mother waiting for scraps of kindness. I was going to become someone they wouldn't recognize, someone they couldn't control, someone they'd regret betraying. And I had no intention of warning them. They kicked me out thinking I was broken. But they didn't realize I was only just beginning to rebuild. There's a particular kind of silence that comes when you stop chasing people. It's not loneliness. It's liberation. For the first time in decades, I woke up without an alarm, no schedule. No orders barked at me, no one waiting to measure my worth in what I could provide. I took my morning coffee by the window of my hotel suite, watching the city breathe. I'd forgotten what it felt like to just be still. I hadn't had that luxury in over 30 years. But it wasn't just peace I was after now. It was preparation. I met with the Colonel's legal team and followed his instructions to the letter. He had been a man of meticulous discipline even in death. The inheritance wasn't just money. It was power protected by trusts, layered accounts, and tax-advantaged investments. He had made sure that no one, not even Daniel, could touch a single cent. My name was on everything. Within a week, I had a financial advisor, a private banker, and a discreet real estate agent. I didn't want a mansion. I wanted class, quiet elegance, a home that felt like a reward, not a weapon. We toured 3 penthouses. I picked the one that faced the bay, the one where the evening light poured in like melted gold. I paid in full without blinking. As my life upgraded, Daniel's curiosity piqued. And yes, I started receiving messages. Hey, haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay? Just checking in. Nat and I were wondering if you were still staying at that budget place. Mom? The guilt wasn't real. It was hunger, masked in politeness. He could sense something had changed. He just didn't know what. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. A mutual acquaintance, Natalie's cousin actually, spotted me leaving a high-end salon and getting into a private car. She posted a photo online, nothing dramatic, just a quiet, "Guess who I saw today?" with a winking emoji. By evening, Daniel had sent 3 voicemails and 2 messages. Are you okay? Someone said you were at the Vesper downtown. Isn't that like crazy expensive? Look, I know we had a misunderstanding, but if something's going on, I think I deserve to know. We're family. Family. Now he remembered. The next day, he called again, this time with a hint of something I hadn't heard in years: urgency. Mom, he said breathlessly, Natalie's pregnant. We just found out. I know things have been weird between us, but we want you to be part of this. I almost laughed. He still didn't know. Still thought I was broke. Still assumed I'd jump at the bait of maternal guilt. But this time, I wasn't biting. I let the message sit in my inbox, unread. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally cared about myself more. This was no longer about proving anything to them. It was about writing a new chapter on my terms. The woman they had once dismissed as a liability was becoming someone entirely different. And the best part? They still had no idea. 2 weeks passed in silence, at least on my end. Daniel kept calling. Natalie tried texting from a different number. Even her mother sent a voice note dripping in artificial sweetness. Hope you're doing well, dear. Just checking in. Heard you were spotted near the Bay District? How exciting. We should catch up, soon. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because while they were busy wondering what I was up to, I was already 3 steps ahead. My new home, a minimalist coastal penthouse with wraparound windows, had just finished being furnished. Every detail was custom-tailored. Brushed oak floors, cream upholstery, and a grand piano in the corner I finally had time to practice on. It was the first place in my life that was entirely mine. No leftover furniture, no secondhand shelves, no reminders of the years I spent asking others for space. And then came the opportunity I didn't even have to create. My real estate agent called with a quiet chuckle in his voice. "You're going to love this," he said. "We're hosting a closed house event next Friday, luxury properties only, high-end clients and investors, networking, wine, the works. And guess who just RSVP'd?" I already knew. Natalie's mother, a woman who once told me I was lucky to be part of her daughter's life, who introduced me as Daniel's housekeeper turned mother. The same woman who years ago offered me a hand-me-down dress for their engagement party, then told people I'd insisted on wearing it. She'd seen the social post from Natalie's cousin, no doubt. The salon, the car, the elevator lobby. She was sniffing around, trying to confirm whether the rumors were true. I smiled. "Send me the details," I told the agent. I wouldn't miss it. The night of the event, I arrived in a deep emerald dress that flowed like water and heels I didn't need to justify to anyone. I wasn't there to brag. I wasn't even there to gloat. I just wanted them to see. Not the money, not the brand names, not the apartment. Me, the woman they overlooked, underestimated, and eventually threw away. Sure enough, 30 minutes in, I heard the familiar voice before I even turned around. "Margaret?" Natalie's mother's tone was feathery, forced. "What are you doing here?" I turned slowly, glass in hand, offering the warmest, calmest smile I'd ever mustered. "Enjoying the view. And you?" She blinked. "Oh, I'm just here with a few friends. Real estate stuff." "Same," I said. "Actually, I closed on one of the penthouses here last week. Just wanted to see who else was buying in the area." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Before she could recover, a man from the hosting team walked over and said cheerfully, "Ms. Holloway, we were just talking about you. Everyone's so impressed by the way you handled the Whitman estate. Truly inspiring." Her face went pale. She tried to mask it with a laugh, but it was brittle, like glass straining before the shatter. "You knew Colonel Whitman?" she asked, her voice trembling just slightly. "I took care of him for 6 years," I replied evenly. "He left me everything." I let the silence settle. Thick, heavy, delicious. The look in her eyes said it all. Confusion, envy, fear, and beneath it all, realization. I gave her a small nod and turned away without waiting for her to speak again. Let her run back to Daniel. Let the whispers begin. Because what was coming next? That wasn't just confrontation. It was consequence. It didn't take long. 3 days after the luxury event, Daniel showed up at the entrance of my new building, sweating through his collar, trying to smile like nothing had ever happened. He buzzed 3 times from the intercom before I finally answered. "Mom," he said into the speaker, voice trembling just slightly. I wanted to talk. Please." I didn't invite him up. Instead, I met him downstairs in the private lobby, where the marble floors and crystal chandeliers offered a silent kind of judgment, the kind that didn't need to speak to be heard. When he saw me, he froze. The version of me he remembered, exhausted, apologetic, always carrying too many bags, was gone. "Wow," he muttered. "You look different." I said nothing. He cleared his throat. "So it's true then? The inheritance? The money? The penthouse?" I nodded. "It is." Silence. Then, as if he couldn't hold it in anymore, he blurted, "Why didn't you tell me?" I tilted my head. "Why would I?" His face twisted. "I'm your son, Mom. You hid all of this while we were struggling." I let out the smallest laugh. It wasn't a mockery, but it was my tired self, letting the sigh of time. "Struggling?" I said softly. "You mean when you told me to go scrub floors at a senior home to earn my keep? Or when you kicked me out the day I lost my job? That's struggling?" He flinched. "I wasn't hiding it," I continued. "I was protecting it. From you." Daniel's face flushed red. "That's not fair. I was under pressure. Natalie was a reflection of your choices," I interrupted. "You chose her. You chose the way you treated me. And you chose to believe that my value ended when my paycheck did." He looked down, jaw tight, fidgeting with his keys like a schoolboy caught cheating. Then the second phase of the act began. His eyes watered, voice soft. "I messed up, okay? I was scared. I didn't mean to throw you out. I didn't know what to do." Now came the guilt, the backpedaling, the sudden realization that the woman they dismissed might have been the one person who could have given them everything. But it was too late. "You didn't know what to do," I said, "so you chose cruelty." Another pause. Then he whispered, "We're going to have a baby." My stomach sank, but not for the reason he hoped. I didn't feel guilt, I felt clarity. "Then I hope you raise that child better than you turned out," I replied quietly. His eyes widened. "You don't mean that." I stepped closer, lowered my voice to a calm, even tone. "I gave up my life to raise you. I worked until my fingers bled. I paid for your school, your wedding, your home. And when I needed just a sliver of dignity in return, you handed me a box of my own belongings and told me I was a burden." Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but I raised a hand. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm not even hurt. I'm just done." He blinked, stunned. "So that's it? You're cutting me off?" "I'm not cutting you off," I said. "You already did that. I'm just honoring the decision." I turned to leave. He reached for my arm, but I pulled away. "Oh, and Daniel?" He paused. "Don't bother coming back. I already gave the concierge a list of people to never let in again." His face crumbled. I walked back through the lobby doors and didn't look back, not once, because the part of me that used to hope for an apology, that part didn't live here anymore. It didn't take long for the ripples to become waves. 2 days after the confrontation, Daniel tried calling again, this time from Natalie's number. When I didn't answer, she left a voicemail that was almost laughable in its attempt at grace. "Hey, Margaret, it's Natalie. Just wanted to say, no hard feelings, okay? We're happy for you. It's just been a whirlwind. Hope we can reconnect soon, especially with the baby coming. You know, family and all that." Family. It was always their fallback word. Not love, not respect. Just obligation masked as affection. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the message to my attorney to keep on file, just in case. Within a week, word of my inheritance and real estate purchase had made its way through the small social circles they clung to. It didn't take much, just a tagged photo at a charity gala, a feature in a community newsletter highlighting my support for veteran programs in the Colonel's name. That's when Natalie's mother got involved again. She showed up at my building one afternoon, dressed in pearls and panic. The concierge turned her away. Later that evening, Daniel sent another message. "Mom, did you seriously block my wife's family from speaking to you?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because the silence I now gave them, that was the real inheritance they'd earned. And then came the unraveling. One evening, while sipping tea on my balcony, Monica, the young real estate agent who helped me buy the penthouse, called. "I just wanted to thank you again, Ms. Holloway," she said. "Your support changed my life. I've closed 5 more sales since. Also, you may want to know, Natalie's cousin started working here last week. She told me Natalie and Daniel are not doing well. Not doing well. Apparently, their mortgage fell behind. Natalie had to go back to work sooner than planned. Daniel's startup lost a major investor, one I'd introduced him to years ago, who now wanted nothing to do with him." Monica lowered her voice. "They're even renting out the guest room now on short-term stays." I didn't feel smug. "I worked until my fingers bled. I paid for your school, your wedding, your home. And when I needed just a sliver of dignity in return, you handed me a box of my own belongings and told me I was a burden." Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but I raised a hand. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm not even hurt. I'm just done." He blinked, stunned. "So that's it? You're cutting me off?" "I'm not cutting you off," I said. "You already did that. I'm just honoring the decision." I turned to leave. He reached for my arm, but I pulled away. "Oh, and Daniel?" He paused. "Don't bother coming back. I already gave the concierge a list of people to never let in again." His face crumbled. I walked back through the lobby doors and didn't look back. Not once. Because the part of me that used to hope for an apology, that part didn't live here anymore. It didn't take long for the ripples to become waves. 2 days after the confrontation, Daniel tried calling again, this time from Natalie's number. When I didn't answer, she left a voicemail that was almost laughable in its attempt at grace. "Hey, Margaret, it's Natalie. Just wanted to say, no hard feelings, okay? We're happy for you. It's just been a whirlwind. Hope we can reconnect soon, especially with the baby coming. You know, family and all that." Family. It was always their fallback word. Not love, not respect, just obligation masked as affection. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the message to my attorney to keep on file, just in case. Within a week, word of my inheritance and real estate purchase had made its way through the small social circles they clung to. It didn't take much, just a tagged photo at a charity gala, a feature in a community newsletter highlighting my support for veteran programs in the Colonel's name. That's when Natalie's mother got involved again. She showed up at my building one afternoon, dressed in pearls and panic. The concierge turned her away. Later that evening, Daniel sent another message. "Mom, did you seriously block my wife's family from speaking to you?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because the silence I now gave them, that was the real inheritance they'd earned. And then came the unraveling. One evening, while sipping tea on my balcony, Monica, the young real estate agent who helped me buy the penthouse, called. "I just wanted to thank you again, Ms. Holloway," she said. "Your support changed my life. I've closed 5 more sales since. Also, you may want to know, Natalie's cousin started working here last week. She told me Natalie and Daniel are not doing well." Not doing well. Apparently, their mortgage fell behind. Natalie had to go back to work sooner than planned. Daniel's startup lost a major investor, one I'd introduced him to years ago who now wanted nothing to do with him. Monica lowered her voice. "They're even renting out the guest room now, on short-term stays." I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel sorry either. This wasn't revenge. This was reality finally catching up. The kind they never prepared for, because they always assumed someone else, me, would cushion their fall. But I wasn't there anymore. I was investing in new things, a scholarship fund in the Colonel's name for veterans' children, a piano for the neighborhood community center, and even art classes for seniors who'd once been invisible, like I had been. People who knew what it meant to be overlooked. People who didn't expect handouts, just a little grace. One morning, as I walked out of a cafe, I saw a familiar figure across the street, disheveled, sunken, slower than I remembered. It was Daniel. He didn't see me. But I stood still for a moment, watching him struggle with a bulging grocery bag. His tie was crooked, his shoes scuffed. The man who once mocked me for freeloading now looked like he hadn't had a decent night's rest in weeks. A car honked behind me, snapping me back. I turned and walked away, not because I didn't care, but because I finally cared more about my own peace than proving a point. There's a strange kind of peace that comes with letting go, not the dramatic kind. The storming out, the slamming doors, the final speech before the curtain drops. No, the real kind of peace comes in quiet moments. The kind where no one else is watching. No one is demanding an explanation. The kind where you finally exhale and realize you've been holding your breath for decades. After everything, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel like I'd won, because life isn't a competition. And I hadn't come here to win anything. I had come here to reclaim myself. In the months that followed, I began building a life I had never thought possible. Not extravagant, not loud, just mine. My mornings were filled with music again, real music. I practiced the piano daily, pouring years of heartache into the keys. Some days I'd find myself crying mid-song, not from sadness, but from relief. My hands, once calloused from mops and scrubbing brushes, now moved freely, beautifully, across ivory and ebony. I traveled, something I had never let myself do. I visited the countryside in Italy, toured a war museum in France in honor of the Colonel, stood on quiet mountaintops, letting wind tangle through my hair. There, no one called me mom. No one asked for favors. No one looked at me like I owed them something. They just saw me, Margaret Holloway. Not a housekeeper, not a servant, not even a mother, just a woman. And I loved her. For the first time in my life, I loved her. Every scar, every line, every aching bone, she had survived. I did receive one more letter from Daniel. It came weeks after the last voicemail, handwritten, a bit smudged, no return address. It didn't say much, just a few lines. "I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know why I did what I did. I hope you're doing better than I am." I didn't write back, not out of bitterness, but because I no longer needed anything from him. Not his guilt, not his recognition, not even his apology. I forgave him in silence, because forgiveness isn't for the other person. It's what frees you from carrying their weight, and I'd carried enough for a lifetime. Now when people ask me if I regret adopting him, I tell them the truth. Number I don't. He taught me something I might never have learned otherwise. That love without boundaries becomes a cage. That selflessness without self-respect becomes destruction. and that it's never too late to stop being someone's doormat and start being your own damn hero. I wasn't perfect, but I was finally whole, and that was the most beautiful thing I'd ever earned.